2021 special school board meeting is called to order. The purpose of this meeting is opportunity for the board to discuss DOH Emergency Rule 64DER 21-15 and our face covering policy. As has been stated in previous meetings, this is a business meeting of the board held in the public. As such, the board is authorized to adopt rules or policies to maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum in a public meeting. Please note that your presence here is subject to those rules and policies. Pursuant to Florida Statute 877.13, it is unlawful and a misdemeanor of the second degree, punishable by up to 60 days in jail and a $500 fine for any person knowingly to disrupt or interfere with the lawful administration or functions of any educational institution or school board, knowingly to advise, counsel, or instruct any school pupil or school employee to disrupt any school or school board function or activity on school board property. To facilitate a cooperative environment for all, please be aware of the following. Per our emergency policy, masks are currently required at all times while indoors on school district property unless a verified medical exemption has been provided or you are socially distanced at 6 feet or more. The appropriate place for public participation in the meeting is during your individual public comment opportunity as identified in the agenda. Outside of your individual public comment opportunity, your role in the meeting is as an observer. I will ask persons deemed to be knowingly or intentionally disrupting this meeting of the School Board of Brevard County or not complying with policy to stop or leave. If persons receiving the warning choose not to follow my instructions, I will instruct Brevard County Sheriff's deputies to take any law enforcement action they deem appropriate, and you may be escorted, detained, or arrested depending on the conduct. Persons who refuse to depart after a warning may also be committing the crime of trespassing in accordance with Florida Statute Section 810.08. These statutes apply to conduct on all school board property, which includes this boardroom as well as the outside of this building to the sidewalk. If you continue to cause a disruption, you are advised that you are in violation of Florida State Statute 877.13, or if you fail to leave the premises after being warned by the Sheriff's Office, you are committing trespass, and the board has authorized the Sheriff's Office to enforce these rules. In the event multiple individuals fail to adhere to these expectations and board business cannot continue due to disruption, I will call a recess and request that law enforcement officers present clear the boardroom of attendees. When the room is cleared, the board will return and resume their meeting with no public present. Those who are signed up to speak will be seated under the front entry area and called in when it is your time to speak. Ms. Escobar, roll call, please.
Mrs. Belford?
Present.
Ms. McDougall?
Present.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Present.
Mr. Susan?
Present.
And Mrs. Campbell?
Present.
That brings us to the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Mullen?
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Oh, yes. I apologize. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. McDougall. That will then bring us to the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Mullins?
Good morning, Madam Chair. The only item on today's agenda is for the board's discussion and consideration of the Department of Health Emergency Rule 64 DER 21-15 and the emergency face covering policy.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved by Ms. Campbell, seconded by Mr. Susan. Is there any discussion on the agenda? All right, hearing none, please vote. Ms. Escobar, if you could record me as an aye. And if you could let me know the vote count, please.
And I'm slow to.
Got my computer.
Oh,
All right, and the motion passes 5-0. We are now at public comments. We have 22 speakers signed up to speak this morning. Each speaker is limited to 1 minute. Comments are limited to the topics on our agenda today: Emergency Rule 64 DER 21-115 and face coverings. We have a clock in front of me to help you keep track of your time. When your time is over, you will be asked to stop and allow the next speaker his or her turn. Always keep in mind that reasonable decorum is always expected, and your statement should be directed to the board chairman. The chairman may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when time is up. It's personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Should an individual not observe proper etiquette, the chairman may request the individual leave the meeting. Let's all encourage an environment appropriate for our children who may be present or watching from home. We will begin with our first three speakers, Katie Delaney, Matthew Dolly, and Wyatt Stumbo. And if you all could please kind of get on deck when your name is called, that'll help to keep us moving. Ms. Delaney.
Thank you. Members of the board, I'm sure you've seen Senator Mayfield's response to the decision that you all have made, that she does not agree with what you believe the law states. We are imploring you, please allow a parental opt-out. It's our children, it's our choice. We are the ones who determine the medical decisions for our kids, and masks are part of that. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Katie. Matthew?
Hello, good morning. I'm kind of here to speak about, or maybe shed some light for some of the legality stuff going on. If anybody knows, that follows the school board, after the new Florida Surgeon General released the new regulations, it was literally the next day that the school board publicly put on their Facebook page that they would adhere to the regulation when it came to the new quarantine policy. And in the same post said, we will ignore the mask mandate regulation and continue the mask mandate that we decided as a school board, which goes against state direction. It was not but a day after the school board was served that they were going to have a lawsuit filed against them. And magically, Monday, it is announced that we're going to have this meeting. So just so everybody understands, the school board tells you one thing in public, but when they're finally forced with legal repercussions, the river flows a different way. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Matthew. As Wyatt's approaching, our next three speakers will be Jody Hand, Chelsea Parvianen, and then Dustin Platter. Wyatt?
Yeah, good morning. As you vote today, I ask that you fulfill the mission and the guidelines, the mission to serve every student with excellence as a standard, and the school board working guidelines that children's interests come first. The board represents the needs and interests of all children. Referencing statements from last meeting, that does not mean just those students can afford speech pathology in a private setting to catch up on language, social skills, and facial expressions. It does include those kindergartners whose teachers haven't, quote, I haven't received one phone call about the students in class can't handle it. It is going well. Just because a student can handle it doesn't mean they should. And I think that's the most important thing here. This whole process of letting our students be there with masks on, we're supposed to give them a voice, not take their voice away. I think when we talk about the middle schoolers who are mostly compliant, are we teaching compliance or excellence of education? I hope you vote no today. I hope that we can get back to making good, conscious decisions as parents for our kids. Thank you.
Thanks, Wyatt. Jody?
Hi, thank you very much for having this meeting today and for hearing the voices of the 2,000 parents that Moms for Liberty Brevard, Florida represents. We are moms, we're dads, we're grandparents, and we're here to protect our parental rights. We aren't the enemy. Used correctly, parental involvement can be both beneficial and wonderful. We want to work with you and not against you. Please hear us and reach out. We don't want to be divisive. We want to work with you. We simply have a different feeling when it comes to our rights as parents. We are imploring you today to please change the mask mandate and allow for the legal parental opt-out. I thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Jody. As Chelsea's approach, oh, go ahead, Chelsea. We'll call the next three after.
These people don't even make eye contact to us when we're speaking. I have nothing to say to them. They are willing to sacrifice our children's physical and psychological health, breaking the Executive Law Order 21-175. Whether you think you're abiding by the law, there's clear literature that you're breaking it. This is no longer a public school. This is a government school. They lie on camera saying they are following the science and not being political. Wake up. they're still getting paid by the administration, even when our governor takes away their paychecks. But it's nothing political, right? As a community, we need to come together and pull our children out of these government camps and not let them socially condition them anymore, because our children have a voice. We can all pull together and actually get rid of them completely, where they no longer have a salary.
Thank you, Chelsea. We appreciate you joining us this morning. Dustin. And as Dustin's approaching, our next three speakers will be Kathy Marler, Ricky Marler, and then Darren Gibson.
I had a whole speech for it in the end, but it's not really relevant. The point is, your job, as everybody's talking about the legality and stuff, is to make sure there's a safe environment for our kids to be educated in. And news for all these people, that education is paid for by the government. Yes. So yes, it is a government-sponsored education. That's how it works. It's a public education for all students. And it's their job
Please stop.
to sit there and ensure that our children are safe in that environment. So you can sit there and go on about your
Hey,
parental rights.
Dustin,
Yes.
Dustin, I've stopped your clock so I can address something, okay? So I'm not taking away your time.
Thank you.
I just need you to make sure that your comments are directed at me, okay?
So they sit there and talk about how it's all about parental rights. But the point is, our students have to be safe there. And your job at times is to sit there and override that for our students' safety. We don't get a decision on whether or not they participate in active shooter drills. That's traumatizing for my 5- and 6-year-old. But we have to do it for their safety. So start thinking about the safety.
Thanks, Dustin. Kathy?
Good morning. Thank you for all that you do.
Kathy, hold on 1 second for me, okay? I'm gonna restart if you can just bring that mic closer so everybody can hear. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for everything you do to keep our children safe. I speak from my heart. My only agenda is to keep my son safe. He is in school for 7 hours a day. My expectations are that he is educated in a safe environment. It's that simple. And that may mean a mask mandate is necessary. My son will speak about a non-political way to determine that safe level. I thank his teachers often for helping me raise him. He is with them for over 50% of his waking hours during school days. I would also like to request that updated ventilation systems be installed in our schools. The money is available. Please ask our governor to release it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Ricky?
Hello, my name is Ricky. I would like to respectfully request that the Brevard County School Board use our county positivity rate as a determining factor in mask mandates. Selecting percentage rate gives a unbiased measurement. It's not political. It is also not who can yell or threaten the loudest. It's a number that will keep everyone as safe as possible. This number from the CDC is less than a 5% positivity rate over a 7-day average. Brevard County's 7-day rolling average is 9%, which is still considered high transmissibility rate. I don't like to wear masks or shoes in school, but I do.
Thanks, Ricky. All right, as Darren is approaching, next three speakers will be Lois Lacoste, Carl Bayette, and Cheryl Wojciechowski. I always get that one wrong, Cheryl. I'm so sorry.
Good morning. Many studies show wine is good and bad for people. I'm tired of personal preferences used for shaming and medical degrees from Grey's Anatomy. Data is still uncertain, but has morphed stubborn perceptions into realities.
Hey, Darren, can you just pull that mic up a little closer to you so we can hear you better? Thank you.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
Children need to see respect and logic, not grown-ups with attitudes like them. Board members, please consider an anonymous survey to find out what Brevard families want from their zone schools. Masks or not, vaccines or not, at least we all would have a better information about specific schools. But maybe the data could lead to longer-term non-mandate solutions next year. For example, during registration, knowing which schools expect, not mandate masks. The superintendent has a doctorate. Surely he can collect this data. COVID, like the flu, is here to stay. I think masks have been distracting from vaccine mandates. Creativity, not CYA, is needed to get ahead of this cycle of stupid and dangerous mandate bureaucracy. Think outside your system and follow the law. Happy to
Thank you,
share other
Darren.
thoughts
We
outside the
appreciate you
meeting.
joining us this morning. Lois?
Good morning. I was a guest speaker at the Brevard Legislative Delegation meeting, as was Tracy Belford, and Jennifer Jenkins was also present. Senator Debbie Mayfield made the following reprimand, and I quote, "The school board has chosen to not listen to the Board of Education's rule, but yet you are sending kids home when they are not listening to your rule. So I ask that the school board reconvene and they consider how inappropriate it is not to abide by the rules set forth by the Board of Education. And as Representative Randy Fine commented, when are you going to follow the law?" Thank you.
Thanks, Lois. Inappropriate. Carl?
First of all, I'm here to go on record that a general public mask mandate is ineffective. It is quite possible to make effective masking by individuals. As a 20-year veteran of the U.S. Army, I trained soldiers in wearing their proper chemical and biological equipment. As an engineer, I'm responsible for the health and welfare of people that work for me. We have OSHA, which is a Respiratory Protection Act to all be following. You can get rid of this general mandate and go to a tiered approach, working with your professionals here in the Brevard County complex. You have engineers and a respiratory protection coordinator or administrator who can help set up a tiered plan and train parents that want to have their children wear a mask and the proper wear of a mask. A simple check is the qualitative fit check, in which you spray an aerosol 3 feet in front of your face and you see if the mask works. If you can smell it,
Thank
it
you.
doesn't
We
work.
appreciate you joining us this morning. Cheryl, and as Cheryl is approaching, our next three speakers will be Karen Fulton, Aaron Davison, and Julia Anton. Cheryl?
Good morning. During a week in August, BPS reported a maximum of 784 COVID-19 cases. Same time in September, reported 38 COVID-19 cases. The major difference was mask schools. Do not take this away from our children, and I value those who stood up for children and reinstated masking. According to the journal Nature, July 2021, 1/3 of children who contract COVID-19, even asymptomatically, will have long-term COVID. This includes insomnia, heart palpitations, fatigue, trouble concentrating, and persistent cold-like symptoms. Do you want kids to contract this? We don't know yet the long-term implications and complications for our children who have their whole lives in front of them. Some of you hide behind a misinterpretation of the law and call masks illegal. It is not. Some of you pander to the misinformed loud minority and compromise the lives and livelihoods of our children. Do not pander to elected, loudmouth, narcissistic sociopaths.
Thank you, Cheryl. Karen?
All right, I'm going to tell you a little story. Recently, I was flying from Michigan here with my 5-year-old granddaughter. We were flying and she loves to play that letter mix game where you have these letters and you make words. I made the word bride and then I made the word ride. And she said, "Nana, those are the same words." And I said, "No, they're not. They're two different words." And she said, "No, they are the same." Convinced of it. I pulled my mask aside and I said, "One is bride and one is ride." And she said, "Oh, they're two different words." I said, "Yes." My thought today is, let's get back to the business of education. That's why we're here. Please, let's let parents and doctors make medical decisions for students. That's their job. And our job here, not ours because I'm not an employee, but is to educate. And I would ask that we get back to the business of education. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Karen. Aaron?
You guys will probably bring it up, but as Cheryl mentioned,
Is
Is this better? Okay. When you guys made the mask mandate, at the same time, if you look at the charts online for the whole entire county, everything starts to decrease. So the whole county didn't mask, just our schools, but you can see that curve go right down for everybody. Nothing unique within our system. But I think you guys have an opportunity today, before your meeting with the DOE on Thursday, to make things right. Even though you believe that a medical opt-out is equivalent to a parental opt-out, it is not. So I hope you will take the opportunity today to actually get within what the DOE ruling is and provide a parental opt-out. Thank you.
Thanks, Erin. Julia, and after Julia, our next three will be Sarah Chiavario, Melissa Hanson, and Joey Kaliwa.
How old are you? I'm asking because most of us outgrow the child's game of let's play pretend by the time we're around 6. And yet here we are, entertaining a bunch of people who are supposed to be adults and who are instead playing let's play pretend. Let's pretend that OSHA and ADA are not the law of the land and that the board isn't legally required to comply with them. Let's pretend that the governor and the DOH can override federal and state law. Let's pretend the Supreme Court precedent doesn't guarantee a community's right to protect itself. Pretending. More whoppers than can be listed in this minute I'm allowed. So again, I'm asking, how old are you? You're supposed to be the adults in the room, and you're not supposed to pander to these people playing let's play pretend like a bunch of 4-year-olds.
Sarah?
Good morning, I'm Sarah. I want to thank the board for implementing the common sense quarantine measures through the emergency orders. There are also emergency orders for mask mandates, and I quote, "The school must allow for a parent or legal guardian to opt the student out of wearing a face covering or mask at the parent or legal guardian's sole discretion." From my heart to yours, I'd really like to get back to focusing on education and stop playing politics and not the illegal mask mandate. And how we do that is going back to masks being optional. Please follow the law. Go back to masks being optional, and let's work together on educating our children in BPS. That is how we serve every student with excellence and create equity in our school system. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Melissa?
It takes a village to raise a child. Every member plays a critical role and owns set responsibilities. As educators, you are the experts on their growth and development in the classroom. You have proven great success. The school scores are the reason why we built our home here. Thank you for that. Let myself, with the partnership from our medical experts, be responsible for the safety and well-being for them. Allow parents to weigh the burden of keeping our children healthy. Relieve yourselves of owning that area. Parental consent matters. That's the issue here. We can argue for years, and sadly we have been, about how to manage and live in the current climate of society. But I don't want to argue anymore. I want my God-given right as a parent to be respected. Our children have suffered the most from all of this fighting. Their educational performance reflects the distraction. Let's show them it's okay to disagree and how to respect another perspective. Let's get them back into learning.
Thanks, Melissa. Audience members, I would just remind you that it would be inappropriate to be responding, making comments. We'll certainly address issues with the mic if necessary. Your time is during your time at the mic, okay? Otherwise, I need for you all to not be a part of the conversation. Joey, give me just 1 second. After Joey, our next 3 speakers are going to be Cindy Martin, Carrie Hart, and Chris McGill. Whenever you're ready, Joey.
Just to clear it up, taxes pay for public education. And watching the recent meeting in front of our state senator and representative, it was very telling for me, and it was actually pretty awesome to watch. It gives you a great insight into the kind of narcissism it takes when you see a person truly believe they know what is better for other people than what they know is better for their own selves. Where it's clear the blatant disregard for the rule of law, who believe they're above the law, they're not accountable to the same laws as everyone else, and that parental rights are beneath them. To be so out of touch and entitled that they believe they do not have to be held accountable to the children they have harmed through learning loss and how that has damaged their education. to believe the false illusion of safety and security by government overreach as found to be superior to the freedoms and liberties guaranteed by God and ensured by the Constitution. Definitely apparent that authoritarianism combined with a lot of arrogance is a very popular among school boards these days. But the one thing I did get from watching that meeting is if I was in your position, I'd want to cover my face in shame as well.
Thanks, Joey. Have a great day. Cindy?
Good morning. It would be prudent for this distinguished BPS school board to reconsider the unlawful mask mandate enacted on 8/30/2021 that was further extended. As you know, the Department of Health and the Department of Education decided in favor of parent choice regarding masks before the start of the school year. However, this school board rejected the rule of the Board of Education and instead imposed the unlawful mask mandate with no parental opt-out. The parents and students of your community are betrayed by your defiance to the Board of Education's rule. Rest assured that parents will be carefully watching the results of your joint meeting on October 7th. It is definitely my perception that the BPS school board should follow the Board of Education's rule for parent choice. I stand with Governor DeSantis.
Thank you. Harry?
Days before the mask mandate went into effect, my coworker received a call that his 6-year-old daughter had been exposed to COVID in the classroom. He had to go pick her up. By, I don't know, 4 or 5 days later, the entire family was sick. Mother, father, and the 12-year-old. This past Thursday, the mother was finally taken off of the ventilator, and funeral will be this week. That's the reason why. So basically, the mask mandate came a few days late for this family. So now we have a 6-year-old and a 12-year-old motherless. My coworker is a widow. That's the reason why you guys voted for the mask mandate. God knows how many other parents did not die this past 6 weeks because the mask mandate was in place.
Thanks, Cindy. We appreciate you joining us this morning. Unfortunately, your time is up. Chris?
Good morning, school board. If a child is wearing a mask, how does his or her immune system adapt to the environment they live in? A child's immune system cannot adapt to the environment due to the restrictions caused by mask mandates, leading to a child's immune system being depleted. So when they do get sick, their illness is now intensified. PCR tests are not accurate, but many of you still trust them. I know several individuals who have received multiple PCR tests within the same day, only to realize that they all have different results. I express my concern today because it's our God-given right to confirm that what is being done regarding mandates has legal grounds. I encourage those who have taken the vaccine to have blood work done. Evidence shows that the vaccines are killing off one's natural immune system. Scientists within these vaccine companies confirm one's natural immune system fights off COVID better than the vaccine. So why do they want those who are young and or healthy to be vaccinated? You cannot compare this vaccine to other vaccines because those actually went through proper trials on top of years of studying. Thank you all and God bless.
Thank you, Chris. And our last speaker this morning, I'm sorry I didn't give you a warning, but Chandler?
All right, high enough, can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so the foundation of any form of government at any level in this country is to protect the rights of their citizens. That is the foundation of any level of government. These parents out here know what's best for their children. They know whether to put a mask on their children, whether to not put a mask on their children. Your job is to protect their rights and to keep our schools running. So you need to stop breaking the law, first of all, and stop making Brevard County a disgrace across the state of Florida by breaking the law and keeping us in the news across the state all over. Take the masks off our children, and you need to do it today. I'm done.
Thanks, Chandler. All right, that concludes our public comments. It's now time to begin our discussion and eventual action surrounding DOH Emergency Rule 64 DER 21-15 and face coverings. just a quick check-in with my fellow board members. Are we good to keep moving through? Does anyone need a restroom break or? Okay. All right, so that will move us into our discussion, and I have been notified that Ms. Campbell has a motion.
I do. I move that we end our current emergency policy effective tomorrow.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion by Ms. Campbell, and I have a second by Mr. Susan. That will open for discussion. Does any board member wish to comment on the motion?
I'll go ahead and get us started if I may.
Sure.
And I'm not
Please
going
leave, thank
to,
you.
I'm not going to go very long because we have all said everything, so many things that we have to say over the last year and a half, especially over the last several meetings about masks. But I just am going to point again to some data that we have when we look and without interpretation, just the data. To show that which shows from the Florida Department of Health that the numbers of cases in the state of Florida dropped the week before we put the mask mandate in place. The number of cases in our county started dropping the week before we put our mask mandate in place, and our own BPS numbers started to drop before the mask mandate took place. The last data was 30, and I pointed that out last time. Just it continued to drop. I am not going to argue what kind of effect it's had of last month because we can't really know. I said that the last time, but the truth is, regardless of our mandate, those things were already happening and they're continuing to fall precipitously. Just FYI, where we are now compared to where we were last year when we had this meeting in May to go ahead and determine that we were going to drop the mask mandate at the end of the school year and come into the school year without one. We are almost to the exact same spot as we were at that time on May 21st. And again, the numbers are dropping precipitously. So I imagine, and unlike the way they were dropping last spring, which was very, very slow. So I anticipate, I can't know for sure, but I anticipate they're going to continue to fall this week. And so that is why I made the recommendation. Thank you, Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Any other board member wish to comment? Ms. Jenkins?
You want to go? Okay. You sure? Great. First, Misty, I want to thank you for your presentation at the legislative hearing. I think it's directly related to what we're talking about right now, and I think it's really important to address. There was a lot of public comments that were bringing that up, and I feel the need to say something about it as well. Someone actually used the word reprimanded by Senator Mayfield, which I think was a really appropriate word to choose. But I also think it's really appropriate to remind Senator Mayfield and Representative Fine that we are equally elected officials in Brevard County. And they do not govern above us. We were given the authority here as board members to make policy and govern for the safety and health and education of our students and our staff. So, they made a point that day. And personally, I believe that point was that this political rhetoric about mask wearing is more important to them than supporting the funding of a fire department CPE program in Palm Bay. You can huff and puff, Mr. Susan, that's fine. They made,
Hold on.
no, no.
Stop, please. I will address it. Audience members, please stop. I will address it as chair. I was in the process. I can't address it if no one can hear me, okay? Board members, if we can please limit the back and forth between each other. Ms. Jenkins, if you would please refrain from that and move on with your comments, okay?
Okay, as
Thank
long
you.
as everyone does the same. What Senator Mayfield and Representative Fine also proved was that this political rhetoric about mask wearing is more important than addressing the funding of wage compression throughout our organization, and that pre-K teachers are equal through K through 12 teachers. They also made it really clear to any business and industry that is looking to come to Brevard County that they care more about their political rhetoric than supporting public education that will supply a workforce for those businesses. So,
stop, please. Stop,
this has
please.
everything to do with the mandate.
You know what? You can clear the room. All right, we are going to clear the room. We're going to take a recess. All right, our meeting is back in session. Ms. Jenkins, I believe you were speaking to the motion on the floor.
Yes. Out of respect for my board members, I'm going to cease the conversation that I was having before. I just want to say that my intention was because I feel like this is a conversation for our entire community. And every single representative in this community has made their voice very clear on where they stand on this issue when that decision is in our hands. And I think that is very important for the community to understand. And the masks are getting in the way of potential success and progress for Brevard Public Schools. I have 3 things to say on this super fast. Obviously, you all know where I stand on this issue, but I just want to make it clear to the public that the day before we instituted the mask mandate, we lost our 5th staff member, who was a 23-year employee for BPS. And so every single time I get one of those phone calls from Ms. Moore, it hits me a certain way. And I want us to remember why we're doing this, why we're doing everything we possibly can to keep our students and staff safe. The numbers of cases went down exponentially compared to the community. It's not equal. Our schools went down exponentially to the community. And one of the most important pieces of data that I think we need to pay attention to is last week, for the first time since school started, our contact to case in school percentage was finally lower than our contact to case in the community, which proves that we're finally doing something right to mitigate the spread within our schools. And that's all we have control over. We don't have control over the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Is there anyone that wants to speak in favor of the motion? Mr. Susan?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Ms. McDougall, it's turned over to you.
I just want to say that I'm not sure if, I think the two together, the quarantine new rule along with our mask mandate has helped our numbers drop significantly. And I just want to remind people why you wear a mask. You wear a mask to protect others in your community. Because when you cough and when you sneeze and you have a mask on, it stays within your mask. It does not go throughout the air. When you don't have it on, it goes through the air. And I'm just going to quickly share with you an email I got from one of our parents who got a notice that said their child had contact to a case and should quarantine. And the mom says, oh, she got the vaccine. And they said, oh, you don't have to quarantine. And the mother thought, you know what? I just want to check just to make sure. And sure enough, the mom did a test and the daughter was positive. But this is a parent who is also responsible, who did the steps that needed to be done. I am concerned that given different circumstances, that people will not have the time or the ability or they have to work. A mask will help the whole community. And that's all I'm concerned about, is keeping our students in school and protecting everyone. So I really do see the value in the use of our masks.
Thank you, Mr. McDougall. Mr. Susan?
Yeah, thank you. I think we all have given our speeches on the why. We've all presented our numbers, and we've all moved forward with what we were trying to do and make an argument. So like Ms. Campbell said, we've pretty much said everything we wanted to say. But today what I wanted to say was not divisive and statistics and everything else. I wanted to take my time to talk about collectiveness, about us working together. Because what's happened in our community, which has been driven by social media and by our news organizations that are trying to move on and create a narrative that doesn't exist, is they've gotten our people to a spin point of that we're attacking each other. And as a person that was a 9-year teacher, as a person that's a board member for the last 5 years, as a person that sat on a couple of committees like the Sales Tax Exemption Committee, I've watched where we've debated many of these issues, and many of them have never gotten to this level. And I truly believe that a lot of the individuals that are inside of our community, whether they're for or against masks, have turned what's become a situation over masks and forgotten what we do. And what we do is we help our children. Right now, we have so many people inside this community, inside of this boardroom, waving flags, doing everything else, and that's fine. Like, that's what we're here for. You come and redress your grievances with us. But the issue is that what are you doing outside of this? that actually pinpoints that you're helping the situation, not just driving a narrative because you don't like what one person or another person said. And what I always go back to is the first day that I was a teacher, as the kids were coming down the hallway, I closed the door and I called my dad and I said, Dad, I'm nervous. I got, 150 kids that are about to walk through an entire classroom sets of mine. And I'm just nervous. And he always said, do what's right for the children. And I think whether you believe in masks or not, that's one issue. But what we're failing to address is that we've had the worst educational drop in American history besides World War II. We have kids every day that are starving, that don't get but meals when they come to our school. And they're the ones in our Title I schools, in some of our worst areas, that they actually need us. And instead, we're arguing about masks. And we're making the narrative about all these other people and everything else. The key is we need you who are out there sitting on your keyboards at night to volunteer in our schools. You can come hit us with what you got. I'm okay with that. I think that going in front of people's houses and protesting is completely wrong. But I will tell you this. We need you inside of our schools. We don't need you sitting late night creating an inflammatory. We don't need our news organizations to start trying to create the animosity. What we need is togetherness. And if we're going to be successful as far as a county, then we need to be successful together. And I'm going to go and start working with a lot of the other community-based organizations and start going that route, because it's time for us to start coming together. And that's what I said. Thank you, Misty.
Thank you, Mr. Susan.
On this motion.
Yes, Ms. McDougal.
So I just want to clarify your motion. So your motion to do away with the home mandate, does that mean that we follow this ruling, or do we need to make another motion to follow the new ruling of the DOH and the Surgeon General?
My motion is to end our emergency policy effective tomorrow, which would be in line with the ruling, because they just said if you're going to have a mandate, you have to have a parental opt-out. That would be another option, but that's not the option that my motion is at this time. Mine is just for us to go, basically it would go back to where we were at the beginning of the year, where there would be a parental opt-out because it would be parental choice on whether students wear a mask or not.
Thank you.
If I can circle back around just for one more, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, I meant to say this earlier, there's been a lot of confusion. Even last week, I heard from one of our legislative body that it was a Board of Education rule. Just to clarify, it was never a Board of Education rule. Their emergency rule, if I understand it correctly, the one they put in place after the governor's executive order, had to do with absences. The only rule that had to do with masks was the Department of Health rule. So just clarification for us as well as the public. When it comes to our numbers, which I agree with what a previous board member said, that our contacts case and other quarantines, but if you're looking at our actual quarantines, part of that, those numbers coming down and being lower than in the community has to do with the new rule, which means we're only quarantining students whose parents choose to quarantine them. They're having the choice in that. So, and I know that there was some hesitation as to that new policy of allowing parents to decide if their child was going to quarantine or not. But our numbers, at least for right now, I don't think the first week those numbers would have had an effect. But in the previous week after that went in place, and it went into place immediately on September 22nd, our case numbers in students and in employees continue to be much lower, almost in half. So I think that we're good there. But I would agree with you, Mr. Susan, that we should come together. So thank you for letting me come back around.
Can I follow that? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull our speakers since this thing started, and I'm going to cross it to who's actually registered inside of our schools to volunteer. And then I'm going to send them a personal letter saying that they should register to volunteer in our schools. So if you came in here to speak, you're going to get a letter from me if you're not a volunteer, and I would like you to. Dr. Mullins, didn't we waive all of the volunteer fees for this year? So there's no excuse. So I'll send you guys a letter that didn't come in to volunteer inside of our schools, and I'd appreciate it if you would, because that's the next step. We need to start coming together after this mask or non-mask mandate, but we need to start doing stuff together as a group and stop on the attacks and stop attacking each other. Thank you.
All right, is there any additional discussion or am I good to call the question? All right, hearing none, I will call the question. Please vote. Ms. Escobar, if you could please register me as a nay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Hold on just one second. I just need to get a count from Ms. Escobar on the vote. All right, the motion fails 2-3. Mr. Susan, you'd like to offer a motion?
I'd like to offer a motion to amend our current policy with a parental opt-out. I need a second.
Second. Second.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Susan and a second from Ms. Campbell. Mr. Susan, it's your motion if you'd like to open discussion, or would you like me to open it to the board?
I'm okay. I mean, everybody pretty much knows what it is. So yeah, open it to the board for
Okay.
whatever they would like.
Board members wish to entertain discussion on that motion?
I didn't think this was a great idea, but I'll take this over continuing as we are. This will help us to fall in line with the DOH emergency rule, which should hopefully take care of our meeting on Thursday. I don't know what the decision will be with the State Board of Education. I would just ask, and I don't know if I can do this as a friendly amendment after we finish discussion, Mr. Gibbs, but that we put some parameters on it as far as making it effective starting tomorrow,
Yeah, I can kind of stretch it.
or how if we're doing it with just parents sending in a note, since we don't have a system in place right now.
Yeah, it was part of what I was going to say is that actually not tomorrow, but if we could wait a day, give Dr. Mullins an opportunity to put something together. It could be you know what I mean? But you're going to create a little bit of a problem if we're creating an opt-out, but they don't have a form to opt out, right?
Right.
So I think that in that case, we need to give Dr. Mullins at least his preview on how long he needs to make that happen. But I would like it's not too difficult to put an opt-out form on the front of our website saying, please just download this and bring it into the schools. And then they bring it into the schools. That should be pretty close to 24 hours till we can do something like that. So I'd like to amend it to allow Dr. Mullins the time that he needs, not to exceed 2 days. If that's what part of this was. I'm sorry. I was going to come back to my discussion at the end.
So your motion then is to amend the current policy to provide a parent opt-out effective Thursday?
Sure.
Does that give Dr. Mullins enough time?
That's what I was going to ask.
Okay.
Yeah. No, good point though. Dr. Mullins, would that give you enough time to put a parental opt-out on the website?
If that's the direction of the board, we'll work to make it available for our community.
I would say Thursday morning, children can come in with their opt-out.
Mr. Gibbs,
That
are
puts
you
us in
comfortable with the
compliance.
process of that amendment? Or
Yeah,
with that, the
Mr.
process of
Susan's
that
making
motion?
it. If Katie wants to second it, then it'll be seconded.
Second.
All right,
So
so
you
I
got-
have a motion and I have a second. I would like to comment if no one else wants to comment.
You haven't yet.
So, and I appreciate your comments, Mr. Susan. As I was contemplating my comments last night, I was focused very much on that, us coming together as well, because I think it's important. And it's been really unfortunate that there has been a lot of focus on divisiveness among the board from our community. And even I spoke with a group of leaders, I want to say it was last week, and the question was asked, how do you all decide, like, when you vote on issues, are you voting just on party lines? Because even though we're nonpartisan, people know our party lines, right? And I shared from my perspective what drives my votes, and somebody made a comment and said, I don't think that's true for your peers. And I said, no, I would suggest that my peers are voting their heart too. And so I want to thank you guys, because I know that this has been tough on all of us. But I do know that when you vote, you're voting because you feel like that's the right thing to do. And I respect and appreciate that. I'm not going to come down on the side of this that you want me to, and it's not because I want to continue any divisiveness, but I'll be honest with you, and you are absolutely right, Ms. Campbell, on the numbers coming down. They're looking so much better. But I have a real fear. I spoke with many of my principals yesterday, and we have not tested, if you will, the new quarantine policy at this point. You know, we set this out for this policy to be lifted when we get to 50 out of 100,000 over a 7-day period. That it could automatically be lifted without board action. And that was because that's the point at which we drop out of the high transmission rate, right? And we're so close. We're at 126 from the last Department of Health report. But we're not there yet. And I have real fear that incorporation of this new quarantine policy could really impact that. And I hope that's not the case. But in talking to my principals, what they said to me was, my goodness, we're doing so much better than we were when we were in the contact tracing and positive tests and quarantine nightmares. And things have improved so much so that out of 5, 4 of them had not had any cases to even test out the quarantine policy. I'm sorry. Out of 6, 4 of them had not had any cases to even test out the quarantine policy. But the ones that had cases come up said that the majority of parents are not choosing to quarantine their children. And I just have concerns that we have not yet seen the impact of that, because if you look at the timeline, our masks optional indoors when socially distanced went into effect on the 30th. Because if you remember, we had the meeting and we said we're not going to do it right away. It was when we transitioned from the initial policy, which was adopted on the 30th. So, and the quarantine optional went into effect on the 27th. So we are not even a full week out of the change in that policy. Is that right? I don't remember the date of the 27th or the day of the week.
The 22nd is when the new quarantine rule, and we did it immediately.
Was it the 22nd?
It was the 22nd.
So, and believe me, as much as anyone else, I want to get the masks off of the kids. But my recommendation would be for us to stick to that 50 per 100,000. And when we get there, to transition to a parent opt-out at that point. And that way, if our numbers are still high, if our numbers go up based on these quarantines, I don't anticipate that happening, but I'm just very uncomfortable with lifting. And Ms. Campbell, I know that you're trying to take some action prior to the meeting on Thursday. And I understand where you're at on that. But I will tell you that I am incredibly frustrated in the way that things have been going at the state level. And I would suggest that the change that we saw in the rule was an admission that the original rule provided that we were in compliance, because they looked at it. There were a couple of things that happened there. The district submitted their responses. Several districts had filed a DOH for a DOH investigation into the legality of the rule from the health department. The administrative law judge said, yes, we will take this up. They were set to start their hearing on that issue that Friday. Call me crazy, but in my opinion, the state knew, because there's an issue, and Mr. Gibbs, tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth or misrepresenting the legal situation on this. But first of all, the executive order that was issued by the governor, there was no authority for that executive issue to be ordered. And that's what created the creation of the rules, right? The rules were created, and the only rulemaking authority that the Department of Health has is to mitigate spread of infection. That policy doesn't mitigate spread of infection. It does nothing about that. And so I would suggest that we continue. I feel like the state needs to weigh in on this. The judges need to weigh in on this, because it's a situation where we started the school with their recommendation of no mandatory masks. And in my opinion, it was pretty catastrophic. When you look at the number of people that contracted disease, the number of people that are sick, and I know a lot of people focus on the death rate for pediatrics, and I just struggle with that. I mean, even last night when I was talking to one of my principals, there's just so much that the general public doesn't understand if they're not impacted. So one of my principals shared with me last night a story that she has a senior who got a perfect score on his SAT. He's in all AP classes. He was applying to MIT. He contracted COVID at the beginning of the year. He's had COVID fog since then. Can't be successful in his classes, doesn't even want to attend school because he doesn't understand what's wrong with him and why he can't function the way that he functioned before. So I share that not to add to the drama of the situation. But I think that we have to understand that just because we don't have a lot of people dying, and thankfully, we still are having widespread impact. And I don't know if I shared with you all, and my own daughter contracted COVID the first week of school. She has missed 5 of her first 9 weeks of high school because she has post-COVID illness. And it's not, she had a very mild case of COVID, but every week she spikes a fever and starts throwing up. And we go through 3 or 4 days where she can't go to school. She goes back for a day or two. I don't want us to minimize the impact that this is having on our kids. And I feel like we are so close to being out of a high spread rating that it's worth it to me to continue to see these numbers go down and to give us some time to see what the impact of the quarantine is going to be. To advocate for all of those, the kids who have lost parents. I think I shared with you all the mother that called me looking for mental health support for her child because her child had contracted COVID at home or at school. I brought it home to her. She was a single parent. She's immune compromised, was vaccinated, still got COVID, got very, very sick, was on the verge of going into the hospital, and she was looking for mental health support for her child because he was having suicidal tendencies because he felt like he may have killed his mom. Like that is, we are data-driven people, and I get it. I think data is so critically important. But I think sometimes we have to step away from the data and we have to look at the reality of what we're experiencing in our schools, what our kids are experiencing, what our faculty and staff are experiencing. And if it means that I go before that state board on Thursday and I share the information that we have and the justification for the actions that we have taken, which I would say are very narrowly focused, we've got a tight constraint on getting to that 50 per 100,000 and then transitioning to that parent opt-out. I think we have a strong argument, along with our constitutional responsibility to create safe school environments, along with the clauses in the Parents' Bill of Rights that clearly states that we can take action like this when it is for the betterment of the district. And I don't mean to be a rabble-rouser. I don't want to get anyone else in trouble, but I just feel like we're not there yet. And to give up now when we've had such drastic changes in the quarantine policy and the indoor mask wearing, it just doesn't feel right to me. And so I want to be, I would love to walk out of today with a 5-0 vote and support you guys. And we're close, but I can't do it yet.
Can I ask a quick question? So the 50 per is because of the CDC guidelines on where it is that the transmission and everything else. If the CDC was to move that and make a recommendation, you know what I mean, they change everything, would that change your mind to allow it to file with that? Does that make sense to you? Like if they came back and said, and I'll get to the reason why, but what's happening now is our health officials on both sides of the aisle are saying that this is something that we're going to be dealing with multiple times. What I'm going to try to avoid, just so everybody's clear, is in the future, us not getting into this again, so that when we come together, we can. Okay. I'm tired of everybody fighting each other. I'm tired of it. The other piece, though, is that if they come back and they say, look, we've been trying to get down to 50, but because it's just part of our society now, we haven't gotten down, so we're going to move it up to 100 or whatever that is. Would that change the metric of this? Because that's the base that we're looking at. It's a purely hypothetical thing that we would probably have to come back, but I'm just trying to see that piece. Is that about where I'm thinking, where you're thinking? I just got 3 questions too, but I figured I'd go one at a time.
Yeah, I feel like it's, and it's all evolving, right? But for now, they have the brains of the medical world or whoever have gotten together and said that you were in a high spread rate until you get to 50 is the top of the moderate spread rate. And if you look at the guidelines that are provided at the various spread levels within the community, there's much more flexibility once you get into that low and moderate area. And so I'm using that as a guidance to try to make the best decisions I can for our kids.
And then the next one is which data set are we using? Is it the DOH or is it the CDC? Because the CDC's comes out a little bit like a week ahead, and the DOH's is on like a 7-day withdrawal, if that makes sense. Like, if you look, the CDC's up every 3 days or something doing a 7-day, and then the DOH goes 1 week behind. So I didn't know what your feelings were there. And the CDC is to our county, like they have that whole breakdown to the county.
So I'll tell you, I've been relying on the DOH numbers primarily because I know that I can call the health department and get additional detail from them. But the DOH numbers they give us that number that we're looking at, which is the 50 per 100,000 over a 7-day. And we can also, which I think is important as we look at what's going on in our schools compared to our community. Ms. Jenkins made an astute comment earlier about where we have been throughout this process. And not only did we see that our numbers coming from the community were higher than those coming from our school, but we also see that the first time since even before school started, we finally have a lower per 100,000 count in our schools than the community. And so I do think there's value in being able to align those numbers, and our dashboard nicely aligns with the DOH report that comes out on Fridays.
So the other question I had was, if it does dip below the 50, we don't have to have a meeting, it just automatically happens. And then in the event that that automatically happens, are the masks just completely off, or are we moving to a different, that was the next thing. Because I've had some questions wrapped around like, okay, if this is the way it is, the majority of the board is moving this direction, what is that piece? So I didn't know if you could expand on that piece.
Yeah, so the way that the policy is currently written is that Dr. Mullins could, at the time that we reached 50 per 100,000 over a 7-day period in the community, Dr. Mullins could lift the mask mandate. Given the changes in the quarantine, I would request, and it would be up to someone to motion as such, but I would request that we modify that policy, that when we reach that 50 per 100,000, we go to a parent opt-out for now. And that would address all of the issues, I think, but still give us, in the event that we see that this quarantine has an impact, still would give us some protection for those families that are concerned. That would be my recommendation.
Okay. All right, I just want that whole scope of the piece. I appreciate your time. Thank you for answering these questions.
Yeah.
That's it.
Anyone else care to comment? Are you guys ready for me to call the question? Okay. Board members, if you would please vote, and Ms. Escobar, if you would please register me as a nay. Thank you. So the motion fails 2-3. Does any board member wish to offer a motion? Mr. Gibbs, am I able to offer a motion?
You would need to transfer the chair over to Matt.
All right.
That can be scoopy.
Mr. Susan, I will transfer chair responsibility over to you, so I may submit a motion.
You don't need me to gavel or anything, right? This is just a chair? Okay.
Yep, you're on the chair point for this motion.
Mr. Susan, if I may make a motion?
You can.
Thank you, sir. I would like to move that we continue with the current duration of our mask policy, changing the provision that when we reach 50 per 100,000 cases in the community, our student mask policy transitions to a parent opt-out. And we maintain our faculty mask expectation unless they're socially distant. And that would, Mr. Gibbs, if I'm correct in understanding the effect of my motion, that would carry us through the end of October. And we would have to revisit the end of October if we were to extend beyond that, correct?
Right, yeah, you've only extended till I think October 29th, so.
unless we reach that 50 per 100,000, at which point the superintendent would have the authority to transition to a parental opt-out
Right.
on that. Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Sorry, Mr. Guzzo,
No, no,
you
no,
should
yeah,
ask if
no,
there's
no,
a
no, I was,
second.
I was getting there. This is new territory for us. Thank you. We have a second, Mrs. Escobar. Did
Just to
you, I
clarify
would say
that.
that was Ms. McDougal? Was that- Yes, I'd say Ms. McDougal had the second.
Yep.
We have the open floor. I think Ms. Belford's going to go last. Is there anybody that wishes to speak against
Want to
this?
clarify real quick?
Oh, come on, Gibbs.
No, just to clarify that, it's only good for Dr. Mullins until the 29th because it would still be in the emergency policy. So
Yes.
you guys have only the emergency policy until the 29th. So if this is approved and we meet that 50 threshold, it's only good to the 29th, at which time the whole emergency policy would fall off unless you extend it again.
That sounds great. Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? Ms. Campbell?
I know it would just hypothetically be for a short time. I mean, we're sitting here at August. Oh, gosh, it's been a long year.
Let's not go back there.
I know. It's October the 5th, and the data won't come out until Friday, assuming, we have miracles, and Friday is, we're at 49.2. We would have a parental opt-out go in effect for a couple of weeks. Here we go back to the craziness of the opt-out and who's going to enforce it, and the union has already negotiated with the MOA that the teachers aren't going to enforce it, so that puts that on our administrators and all the things we said back on August the 10th. But also, I am not really fond of not giving our staff an opt-out, even though I'm thankful we have the social distancing clause back in. So just not a fan.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Does anybody wish to speak against the motion?
That was
Anybody?
against the motion.
What's that?
That was
That's
against
what
the
I said.
motion.
Does anybody else wish to speak?
Oh.
Does anybody wish to speak for the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Belford, you have the floor to speak for your motion.
I think I pretty much said what I needed to say previously. I'll just echo again. I am incredibly optimistic that we are almost out of this, and that is my hope and prayer for everyone, that it is short-lived, and we can stop having these conversations and we can get back to our team votes. But I appreciate your understanding of the situation, and I think I've addressed, unless anyone has questions.
You call the question?
You have to call the question.
I call the
sir.
question. Ms. Escobar, if you can have Ms. Belford do the voice vote, and we will vote online. And if you can record it in the minutes that I was the chair for this one, just because it means a lot to me. Thank you. It's been about 3 years. I just want to let you know. Yes. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against the motion, please signify by saying nay. Nay. Motion passes 3-2. Are there any other business of the board? Any other further discussions?
Can't wait.
Thank you.
Good job, Mr. Susan. I was gonna take the gavel back after we
No,
made the motion.
no, I was
but
not
figured
giving that
I'd
up.
give
I
you-
will fight
I'd
for
give you
that thing.
gavel moment.
Got my handprints on it.